What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the SitRep for today, which is the 2nd of August, 2022. This is the SitRep, the situation report, where I pour over the news from the past 24 hours of what's going on in the world. What's the situation in the world at the moment? What is happening? That's the question that I'm always asking myself. What is happening here? Because it's getting weird, and today is a really interesting one. So I'm going to jump into it. This is all from the perspective of prepping. So how do we make ourselves more prepared for the future that we're heading into? Or as I like to call it, these are the postcards from the apocalypse. I'm sure someone will dig up these recordings in like 150 years and go, look at what these people were talking about at the time. How weird. Good morning or good afternoon or whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world, to Advisor 2021-9. You're in Sydney. Actually, told me that yesterday. I remember. See, sometimes I remember stuff. Not often, but sometimes I remember. Thanks for the shout out. I am still in Stockholm, but I am getting on a plane very soon and heading back to Australia in a very circuitous route. It's going to take me a long time, but I'm going to get home eventually. Looking forward for a zombie outbreak. Aren't we all? Anything to cleanse what is happening right now. Bales, what's going on, man? on the YouTubes. Good to hear from you, dude. Hope you're doing well. All right, let's jump into it this morning, because obviously there's the big news that everyone should be following, that we are like so fucking close right now to World War III. This Pelosi thing is going on, it's happening. She's heading to Taiwan. Taiwan is going. They put out a release saying that Pelosi is coming, even though Pelosi in the US was saying nothing about it all. And that's what I reported on yesterday, that they were conspicuously quiet about it. And I thought that was very, very odd, super odd. Advisor says, oh great, we'll be happy to have you back in Aussie. I'll be happy to be back in Aussie. I always get a little bit anxious nowadays whenever I'm traveling overseas, even though I haven't done it for a very long time. But for a while now, I kind of get a little bit anxious that, like, oh shit, World War III or like the zombie apocalypse could kick off while I'm overseas. How the fuck am I going to get home? So it's always good when I'm on that plane, or always good when it touches back down in Oz. I'll be happy to be back home. All right, back on to World War III. So we as a world, I think we're at a point right now, the way I am seeing it, we're at a point where we are probably closer to nuclear war, to World War III, than we ever have been. Today, this morning, as I woke up, I'm like, wow, this is in my assessment. And again, feel free to argue with me if you wish, and that's more than welcome. If you've got an opposing viewpoint, I would love to hear it. But I feel like we are really, really close at this point here. I don't actually think that China will do anything about this Pelosi visit. I think it might trigger some events that eventually will lead to China moving in on Taiwan, probably after Pelosi is left, because I think if they do it right now, they're well aware that they're going to come straight head to head with the might of the US. So I'm not sure if they're willing to do that this morning. Anyway, should be interesting. So what's happening actually in the news? The UN chief, Antonio Guterres, came out and did a bit of a speech. If you haven't looked at the speech yet, it's a pretty alarming speech, actually. Pretty strong language coming from somebody who's sitting in the UN, and basically was saying that, hey, we're at the point of nuclear war at the moment. There's a great quote in here, and I just want to read this because this is something that I actually teach people on the courses, or something similar, this idea. The clouds that have parted at the end of the Cold War are gathering once more. We have been extremely lucky so far. But lucky is not a strategy. I really like this quote. This is something that I say quite often. I use the quote, "Hope is not a strategy," and that's what a lot of people do. It's like, oh, well, things have been okay in the past, so they'll be okay in the future. Hope is not a strategy. Luck is not a strategy. Forethought and planning is a strategy. Having a strategy is a strategy. So I really like that quote there from him that he came out. But basically what he's saying there is today, well, he quote, "Today humanity is just one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation," or as he pronounces it, annihilation. Or he's got a really funny way of pronouncing it. I don't think he's wrong. We're dangerously close to it at this point. I don't know what the Council of, I think it's the Council of Nuclear Scientists. They've got the Doomsday Clock. If you've ever seen it, go check out the Doomsday Clock if you haven't seen it. It's basically a measurement of how close we are to destruction in the Earth or on the Earth at any given point. So those who are familiar with the Doomsday Clock will know that it got pretty close around the Cuban Missile Crisis. And then it actually eased off. And I think it was about 90 seconds away from midnight being gone. In the 90s, were a pretty peaceful time. It was pretty good living back in the 90s. We had Ninja Turtles and later on, Friends and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Things were good. Anyway, it's gone back down, and it is at right now. I think it's at 4 seconds. It might even be 3 seconds. I could be wrong. I need to check that again. But it is the closest it's ever been. And I would say this morning, my assessment would be probably about 2 seconds to midnight right now. Maybe even a second and a half to midnight. It is pretty close right now. It's pretty dangerous times that we are treading through at the moment. There was an announcement by Putin too, who jumped on the back of this, who actually said something like, "Yes, I agree. We are dangerously close to nuclear warfare, but it is something." His quote was something like, "It is something that we must never do. We must strive not to do it, and we must never do." Whether he's just, waxing hyperbole here, throwing these sorts of things out so he is trying to get the high ground here or not, or whether he actually believes that is, remains to be seen. But it's interesting that he's putting out that sort of information. All right, so they finally said that Pelosi will go into Taiwan after Taiwan said, "Yeah, Pelosi's coming." Pelosi or the US has come out and said, "Yep, they're gonna be there," which is quite interesting. So the US has moved more military assets down to Taiwan. Taiwanese defense officials have allegedly cancelled leave for their soldiers, or for some of their soldiers, not for everyone. And there has been some sort of preparation order put out to the reserve forces as well. I haven't got confirmation of any of that, though. It's just really interesting. So Taiwan appears to be putting out the signals that, hey, we're going onto high alert, which is actually relatively normal for a situation like this. You would expect them to do that. But again, this is going to increase tension. So Taiwan appears to be gearing up for war. Take the Ride on YouTube just said, most Americans are hoping somebody will keep Pelosi over there. Yeah. It's a good sort of sacrificial anode, Pelosi. Like if any official from the US was to get assassinated, then Pelosi might be a good choice. Not well loved, I don't think. Okay, so what has China said? China's come out and warned its military will not sit idly by. So I posted a video on my stories on Instagram, for those of you who saw it yesterday, about just coincidentally, China happened to drop the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, happened to drop a huge propaganda video yesterday, right in the thick of it, right yesterday. And there were a few interesting things about that video, but there was some Chinese writing, and the translation I got from it, and I did not translate this myself, so I cannot verify it. It's just somebody else sent me a translation of it. So I don't know 100% on this, but what the translation was something like telling its soldiers to follow their orders no matter what, and that we will fight off the foreign invaders. Very interesting that comes out yesterday as this is happening. So China's come out and also said that their military will not sit idly by if US House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi visits Taiwan, which she is expected to do. So that's very interesting. This is the latest sort of tit for tat. This is a war of words at the moment. Will we see it cross into actual action? Who knows? Who knows? Something may happen. At the moment, I feel like China and the US are playing a game of chicken and seeing who's going to blink first. So who's going to push past that line where it actually comes to blows? I don't know. This is interesting from a larger strategic and maybe even historical strategic standpoint as far as I'm concerned, because what we're seeing here is a testing of US might. The US is in decline of power. And I think that's an unfortunate thing, but it's a true thing that is actually happening. What has secured this period of peace for probably the last 50 years, really, since World War II, is US might, US power. You can argue with me all you want, but I can actually show you how the US has secured the world. And I'm not talking about them going and fighting wars for oil and stuff like that in Iraq and what they did in Afghanistan. That's kind of beside the point. It's the theory of US retaliation post-World War II. It's the system that they set up that has allowed us to live in peace for so many years now. What we're seeing is that declining. I don't believe there is anyone to fill that space. And I believe that those that will quasi-fill that space will do it in a bad way for human beings on this earth. So what we're seeing now is the sharks are smelling the blood in the water, and the biggest shark, China, is starting to nudge the ship. It's going like, how strong is this? Can I get through? That's what we're seeing here. All right, what else is happening in China, staying in this region now? China's new home sales crater by 40%. 40% drop in new home sales as that mortgage revolt that I've talked about in the past, it's starting to spread throughout China. This is a huge thing. The Chinese housing market as a whole and the Chinese construction market linked in with that is a economic nuclear bomb waiting to go off. This thing is going to be freaking huge when it goes off. And I say when it goes off. I don't think there is any choice that it will go off now. It's been propped up by their government for so long. It's a facade, and that's what people are starting to see now. Their entire housing market is essentially a facade. It's built on sand, and eventually it's going to start to crack. And that's what we're seeing at the moment, are these cracks. And when it collapses in, it's not just going to be like, oh, bad luck for Chinese construction companies. It's going to be, oh, bad luck for the world's economy, because we're all going to fall in that hole with it, because we're all tied into it. Anyway, why I'm putting this information out is these sort of big economic things. If we say, look at Germany pre-World War II, their economy had collapsed. I mean, if we look at Germany pre-World War I, their economy was not in great shape, and it kind of forced them to go into a war, which they then lost. And that caused economic pressures, which in reality almost made it inevitable that World War II was going to happen, or that something was going to happen there where Germany had to push out and exert itself in order to gain economic windfalls by taking over other countries. So that's kind of what we're seeing. China's looking at a almost perfect storm, along with Russia and other countries in the world at the moment, where they've got collapsing demographics. They realize that they're not going to have the ability to do anything like this in maybe 10 years' time, as little as that. So they have to do something now. China has to do something now. Its population is collapsing or aging. So they're going to age out of their ability to do anything. Aging populations have a whole heap of other problems in that, there's a whole heap of financial pressures. So I think China's looking at Taiwan. They're going, right now, semiconductors are a key technological pivot point in our world. We need that. We're going to take it. We just need the excuse. Oh, here's an excuse. Pelosi's landing there. Boom. On top of that, if you start to look at their economic side of house, it doesn't look good. This is going to be another factor that's sort of a hand in the back of the Chinese, pushing them into war. All right, let's go a little bit further north in the east at the moment. North Korea is preparing to conduct its 7th nuclear test. So there's a lot of news around this. Also, it's not just them doing this. They've been talking about it. They've been throwing out threats. They're saying that US and South Korea power and sanctions and things like that are too much at the moment. So this is them pushing back a little bit, but all that sort of stuff I just read as rhetoric, as hyperbole, is just fluff, really. They want to go to test another nuclear bomb, and they're going, well, we have to now because you're doing all this sort of stuff. So all that kind of rhetoric that's been coming out of Kim Jong-il has just been geared towards this nuclear test. So I think they will do this nuclear test relatively soon. All right, let's shift down to the subcontinent now. Sri Lanka is begging for help, allegedly, to feed hundreds of thousands of starving kids. So they're turning the sympathy screws on here. I mean, all their people apparently are struggling for food, but children are being hit quite hard here. So some of these statistics that I've got here, they really opened my eyes this morning. I saw this and was like, whoa, is this true? Around 90% of the entire population rely on government support. This is a government that is now bankrupt. So 90% of their entire population are relying on the government, who is bankrupt, on support from them, which is just not going to happen, which is apparently double what it was 1 year ago. Some economists are starting to say that their official inflation measurement of 60.8%, which we know, if you've ever listened to me before, is well into the hyperinflation mark, which is over 50%. But some economists are saying that that's not true, and that it's probably more like somewhere over 100% is what their official, or what their inflation rate really is. I love this when economists look outside our own countries and go, oh, I think they're lying about their inflation data. I think it's much more than that. Ours is fine though. Yeah, our government would never lie to us. Yeah, ours is at 5.8% or 9.6%. Yeah, totally. They're always lying about this inflation. They don't want inflation this high, and so they're always going to bring it down. Take the Ride asked, is Sri Lanka part of NATO? No, they are not. To my knowledge, they're not. No, there's no countries that are part of NATO that aren't in Europe or North America. It is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And so historically speaking, it's been like the US linked with Britain, France, and Germany and these sorts of countries, and then it's been spreading out from there throughout Europe. They are gearing up towards looking at opening it up. My take on it is, I think like they're going to start to try and pull in a lot of Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. So it'll become a worldwide organization, or that's what they're pushing for at least. But at this point, no, Sri Lanka is part of NATO. So yeah, Sri Lanka there. Sorry, some more of these statistics. A year ago, around 127,000 of the country's under 5-year-olds were malnourished. One of their ministers, the Minister for Women and Child Affairs, says that that figure has multiple several fold. It's gone up several times. Obviously that's much higher now that they're bankrupt and they can't actually support their own people. They can't feed their own people. In fact, they don't even have the ability to grow the food anymore within their own country, partly because of this bankruptcy, but also because of policies towards going green, oddly enough, where they cut their fertilizer usage. and tried to bring in organic farming for their entire population. Didn't work. But hey, if you want to go green, like, I totally support you. Just don't try and feed the population that we have in the world at the moment by doing that. It's not going to work. What we're going to see is Sri Lanka worldwide. And if you want to see that, then yeah, let's go for it. I mean, I am going down the path of being self-reliant, so I'm going to grow my own food. So, you know, if you're happy with hundreds of millions or billions of people dying on the face of the earth in the next few years, let's go green. Let's do it. All right, let's jump over to the Middle East now. Iran is rumbling about nuclear warheads as well. This is another reason why I'm looking at the world going like, well, we're really, really close to midnight right now. Scarily close this morning to midnight. Not to scare anyone or put the, you know, the fear of Odin in you, but I just feel like right now this is a close point. This is one of those points. I'm not sure if we're going to, you know, touch down or not, but I think, you know, we'll probably skim through this one again. Things will ease up maybe a little bit if Pelosi goes home. So I know US, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's best for the world right now if Pelosi goes home, though. Goes back to the US and just goes about fucking the US and the rest of the world. Iran says it will build nuclear warheads, and if Israel or the West makes a stupid mistake, they will be left in ruins. So I think one of the quotes, or one of the translations of the quotes coming out of Iran was, "will be left as a fiery hell or a fiery ruin," or something like that. It's pretty strong language anyway, coming from Iran. They're obviously gearing towards trying to get these warheads up and running. However, on the other side, there's also reports coming out that saying, like, Iran is definitely not trying to get nuclear weapons. It's really schizophrenic reporting that's going on around Iran at the moment. I think some of this sort of stuff is being blown up by the US or by Israel, who want the world to look at Iran as the evil, as part of the axis of evil. However, Iran could quite possibly be moving towards making nuclear weapons. To my knowledge, they have not done it yet. Hello to you, Corinch Justin. Thanks for joining us this morning. All right. People need to say no to NATO from Take the Ride on YouTube. I think so. Just say no, kids. Just say no. Lastly, I'll just jump into Africa for some weather events. So Uganda has seen some horrific flooding, huge flooding happening there. Obviously flooding happening in a lot of parts of the world, including Kentucky. They're still getting smashed by floods. So thoughts going out there, thoughts going over to Uganda here, who have apparently had 25 people dead, hundreds missing. These sort of weather effects are bad anywhere in the world. They're exacerbated in developing countries or in third world countries. They seem to get smashed a lot more. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the way to secure themselves. They don't have the ability to quickly recover from these things either. However, if you were like me when you and saw what happened up in our northern rivers recently, I wouldn't say that our government necessarily has a great ability to respond either. Individual human beings do. We're well resourced in Australia. We're rich in Australia. Each individual human being is rich in Australia, and you can argue with me on that if you want, but I will fight you because I've seen a lot of parts of the world and I know what Paul looks like. And Australians, we are not it. Anyway, we could respond to it. A lot of these people don't have anything, and then what they did have has been taken away from them. So, pretty sad story coming out of Uganda there. But weather effects, again, I just want to hammer this home. Weather effects are a big one for us to worry about. These are the sort of things that are going to smash us in the future, and you need to prepare. You need to think about weather effects, and you need to think about weather effects outside of what has normally happened in your part of the world. Intensified what has normally happened, but other things are going to start happening because the climate is changing. The weather patterns are changing. Good morning, Björn. Björn Ironside. Good to hear from you, bro. Take the Ride on YouTube says, California seeing the worst fires they have ever seen. People are having to flee to Oregon to find a place to stay. Yes, I did catch that story right at the end there. I didn't save it this morning. I thought I'd talked enough about the US maybe and maybe about the fires, but I can't remember the name of the fire, but they have officially declared it as the biggest fire this season, and it is some of the biggest fires they have ever seen as well. This on the back of, it wasn't exactly a long time ago that the US and California in particular had big fires. It was probably 2 years ago. It was just after our fires that Canada and the US got hit with some pretty fires, and now, bam, they're hit again. So these are the sorts of things we need to worry about. These are the sort of things we need to concern ourselves with and prepare for. What are we going to do? How do we deal with natural disasters? How do we deal with fires and floods and earthquakes and things like this? How do we make ourselves better prepared as individuals? And this is why you might want to consider really building a very good, robust grab bag, maybe a 72-hour bag. I'm going to try and edit some videos on my way home whilst bouncing through airports and time zones on a couple of my emergency bags. So one's like an emergency duffel bag. The other one's a shelter duffel bag. They're the kind of bags that I can throw into the car, or anyone in my household can throw into a car, take off, and you'll have enough to sustain you for, at least a few days, if not like weeks. But it'll just make your life a bit more comfortable if you are dislocated from your home. And these are the sorts of things that I want you to start to think about. Build up your home, build up your preps, but also have a plan to stay, have a plan to go. That's two of the main plans that I always tell people to kind of have in their head when you're concerning yourself about prepping. Many hotels, casinos in Las Vegas got flooded as it is tsunami season there. Tsunami season in Las Vegas? You might have to explain that one to me. Las Vegas is a long way from a beach. I didn't even know that Las Vegas had a tsunami season. Lakes are going dry in the cities, getting flooded. Weird. Yes, weird weather. That's what I'm expecting more of. Weird, crazy weather to come. On top of that, weird, crazy human effects. And on top of that, food, right? We're all going to run out of food, or not, we're all going to run out of food. Many human beings are going to find it hard to access food in the near future. So we really need to be thinking about this, us as preppers in the prep community, those who are more of the mindset that we need to be prepared for an uncertain future, that we need to be more self-reliant human beings. These are the sorts of things that we need to start really moving towards. All right, that's it for today, gang. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for all the comments and messages. Really love it. Again, if you've got any questions, send them through to me. If you've got any interesting news stories that you want me to talk about, send them through to me. If you've got your preps that you're really proud of, send them through to me, because I love to see that. So you talk about, send them through to me. If you've got your preps that you're really proud of, send them through to me, because I love to see that sort of stuff. But until next time, thank you all again, and Semper Paratus.